He woke before the sun, not because of a sound, but because the air itself felt different, heavier, as if the earth beneath the lodge had taken a breath and was holding it. And for a moment he thought he was still dreaming, because the warmth against his chest was real, undeniably real. And when his eyes opened, he saw strands of black hair spread like spilled ink across his skin. Her hair, her presence, the chief's daughter, sleeping with her cheek against his heart as though it belonged to her, as though the laws of the tribe had never been carved into stone, as though the punishment for this act wasn't death by the first spear thrown at dawn. And his mind raced backward through the night, through the firelight, and the drums, and the way she had looked at him when the celebration ended, not as a daughter of power, not as something forbidden, but as a woman who had already decided her fate and his along with it. And he remembered how she had taken his hand when no one was looking, how the warriors had been drunk on victory and stories, how the moon had hidden behind clouds as if it did not want to witness what followed. And now here they were, trapped between night and morning, between desire and law, between a heartbeat and an execution. And he slowly became aware of the silence outside. No birds, no wind, no laughter from the outer fires, only stillness. The kind of stillness that comes before something ancient and irreversible unfolds. And when he shifted slightly, she stirred, her eyes opening instantly, sharp and calm. The eyes of someone raised, knowing that every choice costs blood. And she did not gasp or recoil or pretend regret. She only studied his face and said his name softly, the way one speaks to a man already walking toward his fate. And he whispered back, asking how much time remained. And she answered not with words, but by pressing her palm flat against his chest, feeling his heart race. Because time was no longer counted in moments, but in breaths. And outside, far beyond the lodge walls, the ground trembled faintly as feet moved in unison. And he knew, without seeing them, that the warriors were already assembling. Not a few, not a patrol, but all of them. Every able man of the tribe, summoned by a signal older than memory. The signal that meant only one thing. A law had been broken that could not be ignored. And as the grey light of dawn began to bleed through the hide walls, she sat up, unafraid, unashamed, and told him the truth he already feared, that the chief had known before the fire died, that eyes had followed them, that the spirits had been invoked, and that when a chief's daughter is taken, whether by force or by love, the tribe does not ask questions, it demands balance. And he felt his throat tighten as he imagined the circle forming, the spears planted in the ground, the elders watching without mercy, and the chief himself standing like stone, torn between blood and law. And yet she did not cry, she did not beg him to run, because running would stain his name forever, and doom his spirit even if his body survived. And instead she told him something worse, something that made his blood run cold, that at dawn the tribe would not execute him immediately, that they would wait, all 321 warriors, because there was another ancient path, a path spoken of only in whispers, a path that turned shame into honor and death into union. And as the light grew stronger, he realized that the silence outside was not emptiness but discipline. Hundreds of men standing perfectly still, watching the horizon, waiting for the sun to rise so that judgment could be seen clearly by the spirits above. And when the first horn sounded low and slow, echoing through the valley, she leaned close to him and whispered that by sunrise he would either be a corpse, a husband, or a legend sung by men who never dared do what he had already done. And as he stepped outside the lodge, feeling the cold earth under his feet and the weight of 1,000 unseen eyes burning into his back, he understood that some stories begin with love, others with war. But the ones worth remembering begin with a choice that can never be undone. And if you want to know what happens when the sun finally clears the mountains and why 321 warriors waited not for an execution but for a wedding, then stay with this story, because what comes next will test loyalty, courage, and the meaning of honor itself. And if tales like this stir something ancient in you, If you feel your pulse quicken with every word, then make sure you subscribe to this channel, because the greatest stories are only just beginning. The sun broke the ridge like a blade drawn slowly from its sheath, and with its first light, the valley revealed what the silence had hidden. 321 warriors standing in a perfect half-circle, bare-chested, painted for ceremony rather than war. Spears planted in the earth, eyes fixed forward, not on him, but on the space where fate would be decided. And as he stepped fully into the open, the weight of it pressed down on him so heavily that for a heartbeat he wondered, and if his knees would buckle. But they did not, because fear had already burned itself out and left something colder and sharper behind: resolve. And the chief stood at the center, taller than memory itself, hair bound with the marks of leadership, face unreadable, a man who had buried sons and still ruled without mercy. And when he raised his hand, the warriors struck the butts of their spears against the ground as one, a sound like thunder rolling through bone, announcing to the spirits that judgment had begun. And the chief spoke the ancient words that named the crime without naming love, the taking of what was protected, the crossing of bloodlines without permission, the act that demanded balance. And when he asked the question, every man feared whether the accused would run, fight, or submit to the third path. The path few had survived. The man did not hesitate, because she stood just behind the chief now, her chin raised, eyes steady, dressed not as a daughter but as a bride, red earth painted along her arms, white ash across her brow. And in that moment, he understood that this was never about punishment alone. It was about transformation, about whether an outsider could be forged into something worthy through trial. And when he chose the third path, the warriors moved, parting to reveal the length of the valley, a gauntlet carved by time and legend, lined with watchers and marked by stakes driven deep into the ground, each one representing a vow he would have to earn with blood, strength, and spirit. And without ceremony he was stripped of weapons, stripped of name, and sent forward with nothing but his breath and the rising heat of the sun. And the first trial came not from men but from endurance, running until his lungs screamed and his vision blurred, while drums beat slow and relentless, counting not steps but will. And when he stumbled, hands did not reach out to help him, because help would poison the truth of the trial. And when he reached the first stake, he was already bleeding from the feet. And there he faced the warriors one by one, not to kill but to withstand, to rise every time he was thrown down, to show that pain could not erase purpose. And hours passed like years as the sun climbed higher, and with every fall he heard the murmurs of the tribe shift, doubt giving way to reluctant respect. And at the final stake, when his body trembled and his vision swam, the chief himself stepped forward, holding the last test, not a weapon but a question, spoken only once in a man's life, asking not why he desired the chief's daughter, but whether he would give his life to protect the tribe, even if she were lost to him forever. And the answer came not in words, but in the way he knelt, pressing his forehead to the earth, offering everything without demand. And the valley went silent again, deeper than before, because the spirits had been listening. And when the chief lifted him to his feet and turned him toward the warriors, something ancient shifted, spears rising not in threat but in salute. And the chief declared that balance had been met, that blood had been paid with courage, and that what began in secrecy would end in daylight. And as the chief's daughter stepped forward, placing her hand in his, the tribe roared, not with approval alone but with awe, because they had witnessed a man walk into death and return as one of their own. And the wedding took place not with softness but with fire, vows spoken to the sky, drums echoing into the hills. And when night fell again, he stood among the warriors who had once waited to see him die, now brothers bound by shared witness. And this became a story told to children and remembered by elders, a story not of scandal but of courage, of a dawn where 321 warriors waited not to kill a man, but to see if he was worthy of becoming legend. And if this story held you, if you felt every step, every breath, every strike of the drum, then you already understand why stories like this matter. So don't let it end here. Subscribe to the channel, because there are more legends waiting to be told. And the next one may be even more unforgettable.